Well,
let's start it all
good.
over.
All right, guys. Welcome to the DDM podcast, and I'm here with Jeff Donati, and obviously Jelani and Brian Barnhill. Is that how you say your last
right.
name?
Yeah, pretty
All
simple.
right. Obviously, Jeff Donati is a Pro 2 driver, a little bit of experience. I mean, he's okay, I guess. And Brian's his crew chief. So they're going to talk to us a couple things. Basically, we're going to go over some LS stuff and basic advice in drifting and stuff like that, and the tech tips and drift culture. So obviously, Jeff, give him a quick intro. Who are you? What do you do?
Who is this guy?
I know.
So
you have a blue car. That's about all I know
That's
about
what
you.
you-
So
It's a blue car. But no, my name's Jeff Donati. I have been drifting for 5 years. Competing for this will be my 4th year. I think I've been drifting for 6 years now.
I'm about to say 5 years seems short to me.
Yeah, no, it was 6 years. This will be my 6th season. It's hard to say years because they sort of overlap a little bit, seasons. But like, 6th season. I've been competing for 4 seasons.
yeah.
This will be my 2nd year in Pro 2. I won the Midwest Drift Union Pro-Am Series in 2017. Got my Pro 2 license. And, yeah, just been having fun.
Nice.
Awesome.
Brian,
Yeah.
a little bit of quick. What do you do, experience-wise, stuff like that?
Brian Barnhill. I own Tuner Tools, also the title sponsor on Jeff Donati's car. But yeah, I've been involved in drifting for about 6 years as well now, started in the Midwest. History and other racing, and just got involved in drifting, crewing, and brought Jeff onto our program, mainly just working on his car. And just kind of clicked and decided to, he went into Pro-Am not expecting to do anything, just wanting to qualify. And, we just clicked and the program worked out well. So we started working together and been all together all the way up through Pro 2. So a lot of experience building drift cars, LS and other powered, and setting them up for Jeff and guys all the way down to the grassroots and trying to get, it doesn't matter what level you are, working with guys to make sure their cars are set up right.
Cool. Awesome. So, obviously, the big thing I want to talk to you guys about, you've been running LS for 4 or 5 years?
5 years.
5 years. And you've gone through a couple, learned a lot. What's your advice to someone that's getting into more of a grassroots car and say they pick up like a junkyard 5.3 or 6.0 or something? What modifications are you doing to that motor to make sure it doesn't blow itself to pieces?
So first off, they're great motors because they can't really hurt themselves at an NA power level. They're pretty bulletproof in all ways. The only thing I ever did when I started and just was running bone stock motors, I just changed the oil pump out. Maybe timing chain too. You can get like a LS2 timing chain from Summit for like $20 and have it installed with the oil pump in 10 minutes and
Yeah.
be right down the road. So you can keep them really simple and cheap. It's the biggest thing.
You agree, Brian?
Yeah, same thing. Just the normal maintenance stuff. The oil pump is a must-have for me on anything that sees more than street time. I even recommend that on street LS cars. But yeah, and while you're in there, front rear mains, those truck blocks get abused. They run really rich. It's pretty common to see those things leak oil, and it's not cool to have your track car leak oil. It's not cool to have any car leak oil, but if you're leaking oil on the track, you're there's no way to say you're a dick.
Nobody likes you.
You can edit that out if you want, but yeah, I stand by
Don't be that
statement.
guy.
But yeah,
Mother Nature doesn't like you.
Yeah, there's some gaskets that are an issue. Those engines sit, so just do your normal maintenance stuff. Take care of your shit. Keep it simple, but that doesn't mean keep it haggard. So yeah, oil pump and just do some gaskets. And there are some weak points, but they involve opening up the engine. And no guy running a grassroots power level are going to find weak points of the internals running these. Worst case, you pull ahead and you put some LS7 lifters in. And if you do a cam, just make sure you got the right push rods in there.
Yeah.
But bone stock, you don't even need to do a cam. They're nice, they give you some power band, but put the engine in, take care of it, do your maintenance. Don't be haggard.
I see some guys, and this was including me when I was helping out Garrett. We struggled with some overheating issues when we were LS. So, what are you guys' recommendations as far as like cooling system, effective cooling for an LS setup?
So I think everybody gets, experiences at some point when they do an LS swap, but I mean, my first season, I just repurposed the radiator for my SR car, and my car would overheat just sitting in line. So I see a lot of people try to like do a whole bunch of really fancy stuff with swirl pots and, you know, bully like crazy stuff that's unnecessary. One year in 2016, I just got fed up with it, and I just measured basically the biggest possible, you know, space that I could get in the front of my car, and I just found a radiator that was close. That was a dual pass, like nice radiator, and it was like a Griffin LS2-3 radiator from Summit, and I put a Taurus fan on it, and that thing would do, you know, you run out of tires before it would overheat.
Yeah.
So
Good fan, decent radiator. The Griffin's kind of expensive for anyone that goes out there and look it up. There are some other good options. CNR and CSF make some good radiators, a little more budget minded. They're not going to be quite as good. You can't go hot lap at 700 horsepower, but that and a good fan. Taurus fan's good. I prefer the small, larger fans, just because the Taurus fan is hard on your electrical system. So there's a lot of wiring. That's a mistake I see people make, and they just pop the fuse on the Taurus fan all the time, and that's just as bad as overheating. And the other two things are put a thermostat in it, and on your water pump, because you're probably not running heat. If you aren't, there are 2 ports there. Don't cap those. Loop those 2 together. Otherwise, it shrouds the thermostat, and you actually wind up basically a little turbulent. And it's not flowing coolant properly, and it'll basically kind of cavitate, and you'll overheat from that too. So just thermostat, good radiator, good fan, and loop those lines, and you should be good.
So yeah, that would explain why we had a little bit of drama. So we did what you said. We had the KA, or would have been SR radiator with some I think ISIS dual fans. They felt like kittens purring.
Don't those flex any thin fan, throw it in the garbage.
Yeah, so we were 200. We could see 250 degrees after 2 laps, pretty easy. So that would explain that. Another thing I see some people might struggle with, power steering. Any tips on power steering?
power steering is another thing that I think is pretty hard to figure out with these motors. If you look on the forums, a lot of people say that the F-body power steering pumps or any GM power steering pump is going to flow too much and it's going to blow out the seals in the rack, because basically the KA or SR pumps don't flow as much as a LS pump is, because an LS pump is going to be powering some big heavy thing versus the KA or SR pump is for these light 240s. But I just ran no flow restrictor, no anything, just hook it up, run a good cooler, run good fluid. Mm-hmm. I use Valvoline non-synthetic. These pumps would run on olive oil, so it's not, you don't have to be super picky with the fluid, but the Valvoline non-synthetic's like literally the cheapest stuff you can buy anyway. And the racks, I think the stock GM pumps are like 1.3 gallons per minute, maybe a little bit more than that. But I run like 3.3 gallons per minute in my car right now. Damn. And the racks are fine. So yeah, just keep it cool. Make sure you have a good high pressure line. But yeah, just super basic, and make sure to bleed the system too. Yeah, bleeding the power steering system is really important before you even put it on the ground or before you even start the motor.
Yeah, again, maintenance stuff. I think a lot of the problems I was too with people saying it's the LS is they went from this low power thing, this high power car that they're beating on harder, and little problems that like the rack leaked a little bit and they never thought about it. And okay, well now you're putting a lot more force on that because you're sideways more and you're just beating on the car more. And it's not that the LS is the problem; it's just the car's being used harder. So don't do anything until the rest of the car is perfect. Don't start changing things, because a tune isn't going to fix a mechanical problem. Adding a bigger engine isn't going to fix a problem that already exists. So make your foundation before you touch anything.
So on that note, give us a rundown of your first LS setup and the evolution of your LS setup until you got to Pro 2.
So it started out with a literally just $500 junkyard motor out of 5.3 out of some old pickup truck. No cam in it, stock heads, never even changed the valve springs or anything, just oil pump and a timing chain. Made like 280 maybe. But the nice thing about LS's is like a 280 horsepower LS versus say something like a 280 horsepower SR, not even going to feel remotely the same.
Yeah,
so
that's
LS
still 240,
makes,
250 foot-pounds all the way through the power band.
So much torque, and it's just a bigger motor that you don't need a huge horsepower LS to feel like you have a lot of horsepower. But anyway, in 2016, all I did was put a cam in that same motor. Kept the heads on it, never even took the heads off, just just push rods, correctly sized push rods, and a cam, and it made like 330.
333 on
Yep.
a Dynamics.
So it picked up like 50 horsepower, which was plenty for Pro-Am. Ran like a 245 Kenda tire on some, middle of the road, basic coilovers that were a few years old anyway. And it was super, that was my favorite rendition of the LS in my, career, because you could run it, hot lap it would never overheat, didn't make enough horsepower to break anything, but it was also plenty of horsepower to have fun and keep up with other cars, and it was cheap to run on tires. I mean, it ran on 93, all my LSs up until the last year in Pro 2 ran on 93 octane pump gas, basic as you can get, and that was just my favorite, because you could run all the time. Like at No Star Bash in 2016 at Gingerman, a set of tires would last about 30 minutes, and I wouldn't stop going, because I'd go out early when nobody was awake yet, or whatever, still hungover, and Swan would just wave me through, and I could just do 30 minutes of literally
We
like,
only change
hot
tires
lapping.
once a session.
And the motor never overheated. I was clutch kicking the bejesus out of it. Wasn't breaking any axles. There's no fuss. It's literally no frills, just absolute seat time monster. So I can't wait to build another car like that and just drive. I mean, this time, literally this weekend, 3 years ago, I think I did 35 to 40 laps at Killcare, one of the events, just going, put it back in the trailer, do it all again the next weekend,
And what would you say like the average event cost for that level of a car was? So tires, fuel for the car, entrance fee, like how much was it costing you to run an event when that car was at that level?
Yeah, so like breaking it down, like entry fee, I guess you can say like $75 or something like that to get in, and then a tank of gas, just to make the math easy, just say like $25 worth of gas for the car, because like I said, it was just 93 octane or whatever back then, and so that's $100 for gas and entry fee, and then tires. The 245 Kendas I ran were about $70 a piece, and I would go through maybe 4 in a weekend. So
Even MDU, when we won the championship, we were doing top 8s on top 16 even. I think we had, no, we did, I think we'd change into top 8, and we run top 8 on one set of tires.
yes, I mean a typical event cost in 2016 for me was maybe $400, and that's with an insane amount of laps. That's 30 plus laps.
Counting diesel to the track and back.
So that's a decently set up suspension car with mid 300 horsepower, low 300 horsepower, $400 to take it out. And a big thing people don't think about is the season, especially in the Midwest with wintertime being a factor, 5 months of frost. The season's not that long. And the events happen close together. Like right now, everybody's making their schedules. There's an event here, there's an event there. You can have back-to-back events weekend after weekend. You got to keep your costs low if you want to make all these events and get all the seat time, because if it's costing you $800, $1,000 every time you take your car out, that means you have to have a disposable income of $2,500 every month to be able to make all those events. Whereas with a $2,500 disposable income with that car you're talking about, you could do an event every weekend.
Yeah, you could seriously drive that car every weekend and not really sweat
Yeah.
it.
So if you had $1,000 with a car like that, you could drive it twice a month. So that means you had to have if you get paid bi-weekly, you got to have $500 saved between those 2 paychecks throughout the month, and you could drive that car 2 weekends out of the month. That's huge.
Yeah,
That's a lot of seat time.
Think about it. You go out to dinner at a nice place twice a month, and I don't drink, but like people that go out on weekends or something, that's literally like a weekend's worth of drinking and like 2 nice dinners to drive
my wife
30.
and I'll spend
It's
$50,
you don't have to
$80
make
on dinner, yeah.
sacrifices to be able to enjoy a lot
Yeah.
of seat time in a drift car.
So I guess the big question is, okay, you take this car out for a weekend.
That's
What kind of costs are we talking about
that
here?
is the $1 million question that a lot of people don't know. How much does it take to take the Pro 2 car out for a weekend?
So let's see. We'll use the Michigan Drift event that I went to last fall as an example, for like a grassroots one. So this car gets 2 laps for a set of tires. Tires are $100 a piece, so it's pretty easy math. The amount of tires you go through times 100. So I used 8 tires that weekend, It's $800 in tires right there. But the huge kicker is that only got me 8 laps. So 8 laps for $800. The car runs on 102 octane race fuel. So that's double the price of we get a hookup on it, but even then it's still double the price of 93.
Mm-hmm.
And then an oil change every weekend, $100.
You probably do spark plugs. You said you change the transmission and diff fluid every time you drive it too.
So that's, you're looking easily, and in including diesel, I mean, just that event to show up, drive 8 laps, and go home, and Bailey let me drive for free. I didn't even have to pay to enter. That's still over $1,000 weekend to do 8 laps.
Let's assume nothing happens.
And that's assuming you don't break anything.
Yep.
So,
Wait, I think we did the math wrong. 16 laps. 2 laps to a set.
But 8 tires, it's
yeah, but there's one
that's
tire
4
on each
sets.
side.
Oh, one time. Yeah, you're right. Ooh.
Yeah.
I didn't graduate. But yeah. So I mean, and that's where it's at, and that's what you guys got to think about when this car doesn't make that much power.
Yeah.
I think it's deceiving. How much power
It's
does
about
your Pro 2 car make?
725 at the
At the crank, it makes 750 or so, but with the quick change and everything to the tire, it's only putting down like
It
low
was
600s.
640, 650.
So it's a shredder.
Yep.
You don't even need a bunch of horsepower to be expensive. So
And a lot of you guys, I know some of the builds going on, with some of these so-called simple builds, you're getting really close to his power number, and we were over that power number when we were in Pro-Am, and we were in the same boat. Like, these Kendas that last so long, we were killing them in 4 laps, 6 laps tops, and we were running 265, so they were $85 a tire. So we're getting right back up there into this Pro 2 Pro pricing tire, and we were breaking everything because this car is equipped to handle the horsepower with the quick change in the dog box. We were still trying to run synchronized transmissions. We're still running 350Z diffs, 240 diffs, or even adapter stubs. We tried everything. It all broke, and we didn't even have that much grip dial in the car. This thing is a grip monster. We need to take grip out of it.
Yeah.
So this car is equipped to handle that abuse. A lot of these cars that we're building in grassroots now that are making this type of high power levels aren't. The motor's there, but the rest of the driveline's not there because that's, it's cool to see the big turbo going in the engine bay, but nobody sees the transmission under the car. That doesn't show off. So that's some of the stuff that gets touched last usually. So, you got to think about that. What's your operating cost going to be when you build a car like that? And you want to get maximum seat time for $1, you really need to be keeping it around. If you can't get an event done for $500, you need to figure out what can you change on the car to make it more affordable to keep going. You want to get maximum seat time through your 7-month, season because you got wintertime in the Midwest. So, just something to think about.
I think even time-wise alone, I don't have it sitting here, but our checklist for this car, that every time the car goes out of the trailer, before it even goes to track, it gets checked. Then when it comes back from track, it gets checked. And that checklist, I think, is 5 or 6 pages long. That's a lot of time, but there's that much money involved in doing that prevents breaking one of those very expensive things, and that lets us keep driving. But that's still time we spend. And if you're the guy that just wants to, go out on the weekend and you've got a day job and you're grinding just to get that one weekend, you don't want to go home to your garage and do checks or, God forbid, repairs and miss an event because of that all the time. So that's more to it. And even on top of that, you're running that power. Even like Jelani said, if you're running things that can't take it, that power is actually not going to help you. You're going to get more wheel speed, and you're going to. That's not those tires that last forever. They're actually going to be worse at that wheel speed, and they're not going to last as long. Dan Perlinfine was struggling all last year at Riverside, and last round, I just said, hey man, go down a gear, take some of that wheel speed away.
Mm-hmm.
Immediately, more grip, tires lasted longer, and they worked better. And we turned boost down and we took wheel speed away. So if your car's not equipped for it and you don't know why you need it, don't. You don't.
Yeah.
Said those 400 horsepower is the most we ever made, and we won 3 of the 4 rounds that year on that. And it was the simplest car. It wasn't basic. We didn't skip any steps, but it was simple. There was nothing trick on that car.
So you won a championship the year before you went in the Pro 2, obviously. And not only did you win it, you won it handily. You probably had one of the most winning seasons in MDU out of any driver
Yeah, it was the most winningest season out of their, like, however long they've been running.
Yep.
So
Almost swept it.
almost swept it.
Almost with a clean sweep.
Almost.
And we were number 2 to you.
Yep.
And we had the crazier car, obviously, made maybe 40% more horsepower than you. And you were our Achilles heel the whole season. What were the specs on that iconic championship winningest chassis in Pro-Am?
I mean, like, it's so basic, dude. It's a, you know, literally the motor out of that car was a plow truck motor from Michigan. You know, we took the valley cut, we took the intake off of it. It was like the knock sensors looked like they had been underwater for 2 years. But you know, all we did was put, you know, different heads on it, and they weren't even fancy heads. They were just a stock head from a Z06 C5 Corvette. You know, those are run-of-the-mill heads. You can get them for a couple $100 on eBay. That's what I did, and then it made like 400. The fanciest part of that car was the dog box, but in this day and age, a dog box is just as cheap as a T56, if not cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you don't plan on streeting a car, I don't see any reason to not do a dog box if you know what you're doing, because they're cheap. And
Hold that thought. Yeah, and then you look at, and this isn't to take a shot at Serial 9, but you know, Serial 9 sells a transmission adapter to put a Z33 trans behind a JZ, and just that adapter with the shifter is $2,800, and you still have to get the CDO9 transmission that you hope is good, and a couple other little odds and ends to get it in a car. So at that point, with the cost of the transmission and adapter, you start dancing in the $4,000 territory. You can get a really solid dog box for that price.
yeah,
But you know, that's not for everybody. Serial 9 still is a viable option because not everybody wants to deal with the dog box. Some people are still streeting their cars. Some people full interior. You know, that's not for everybody. So, but just so you guys know that, you know, like what he just said, exactly what he just said. Know what you're trying to do with the car. If your main focus is seat time, track time, and you might know you're going to start dabbling towards more competition drifting, but you still want to do fun days, or you want to be on track as long as possible, look into a dog box. You might be able to do one for an affordable cost.
So at that power level, a dog box versus another trans, is it going to keep you from doing the same thing?
Right.
The dog box is nice, so don't think that, oh, I have to do a dog box, now I can't do the street car. But yeah, like, plan out your whole system. Don't look at it as, oh, I'm going to do LS and then this and then this. Your car has to work as one system. So,
Yep.
you know, plan your budget out and plan your build out from the beginning to do what you want to do with it. But understand that part of that budget is also driving, and if you can't afford to drive, you can't afford to build that car. So, you know, go back and build your whole system, not just a car or not just a
And it
seat.
might seem like the dog box goes against the sort of a grassroots push, but a lot of thing behind grassroots too is sometimes it's better to spend a little bit more money up front to save you a lot of money and time down the line and maximize your investment. The dog box, if you're having a struggle with gear ratios, wherever you're, you know, sometimes people are like, I need to add more power, I can't use third. The dog box can help you with that too. You can just change the ratios for cheaper than adding more power. And when it's time to service a transmission, the parts are cheap. You can literally go get seals and things like that from the parts stores. We just went through this and rebuilt the one in this car.
Mm-hmm.
You go to a hardware store and get the seal of this transmission.
Yeah, you go to a hardware store. It's really easy. So yes, you know, you might say, "Oh man, he's talking dog boxes and grassroots in the same line as blasphemy." No, grassroots is also about maximizing your investment. Dollar for fun.
That's right. A dog box is a 60s muscle car transmission with slightly upgraded gears in it. These aren't much different than a T10 that came in your dad's muscle car.
Well, I just want to verify this. We're not saying dog box for a stock 5.3.
no, we're just talking
No,
about it.
no,
Like,
no.
for the,
This is for
We-
400-ish.
Yeah, we
you know,
graduated to his
Pro-Am
his
stuff.
Pro-Am championship car, which is a little bit more capable than the entry-level grassroots LS swap car.
I mean, the dog box. I mean, and the important thing to note about the dog box, I didn't buy it. The mindset when I was thinking about it isn't this will help me win.
Yeah.
Right. It was, or this will make me a better driver. It was just, this will make my car more reliable so I can drive it more.
Yep.
You know, that's really all that. It's just the thought process when I was buying it. You know.
Yep.
Yeah,
So-
there's a few things like that sound counterintuitive, but that's where those guys like talk to like. There's a few little things like it. Once you really break it down as to why, because yeah, pros do it, but it's not always because that's the pro level thing. There's other pros there, and if you're looking at the money, and that's where,
There's other
like I said,
pros
if you
and
don't do a
cons.
whole system and you look at it as like, oh well, I need an engine, and then you're scrambling and you just buy whatever random T56 or whatever you can buy because that's what bolts on easily. But you do a little bit of research, and you can do a dog box for the same cost.
Yeah, I mean,
There's
and
a few
that's
other
the
things
thing.
like that, but
With the LS, it's important to note that dog boxes behind LS motors are way easier to do than other motors
Right.
because the LS, the bolt pattern for the way the bell housing attaches to an LS
Yeah.
is the same as like a Chevy small block. The only difference is that the LSs have one more bolt hole, which doesn't even matter. So you can just get a bell housing for like a big block Chevy, and the dog box will literally just bolt right up to that, and you can go. So it's a really straightforward process. It's
Yeah.
not, like with the JZ, that's a different story because you got to get adapters and
You got to get a
special
different
stuff.
clutch. Your dog box has the same splines as the transmission that went behind the engine also
yeah.
too, so you can run
you
your
run an
normal
F-body
clutch.
clutch on a dog box. Like I
Yeah,
said,
the-
it's a T10 with better gears. That's it.
Yeah.
Really?
Or
Okay.
It's,
So that's
it's
why
the
it
same
makes
transmission
sense
as the-
because it's, for LSs, competition LSs, it makes sense. But by no means do I could have easily got my Pro 2 license the first time I did Pro
Yes,
Am
I mean-
with a CD009 Z33 transmission. There's no reason why you need it, but it just
NV3500s and 4500s are perfectly valid options between a 5.3 or a 4.8. They'll take up to 330 horsepower, a little bit more depending on what you're doing with them. And nobody else wants those, especially the 3500s. But
Yeah.
they'll take 3 to 330. They're a great grassroots option for a stock 5.3.
Yeah.
And you can pick them up for well under $1,000.
And another thing with the dog box too, with the LS is, in the 240 especially, is the space. Like that transmission fits in there like butter. It's not a lot of work. We just benched it into the car. One person can lift that thing into the car by herself, goes in like butter every time, 4 bolts.
Yeah.
So dropping it at the track because you got to do something, cake. Everything comes out easy. It's a really good viable option if you're really trying to maximize your seat time and your car is not so much a street car anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think for a Pro-Am level LS build, I think a dog box is a pretty easy thing to justify because it's more reliable. It's basically the same cost, if not cheaper. I mean, you want to go out and buy an RPM Stage 5 T56, that's like a $5,000 or $6,000 transmission where you can get a way better one for way cheaper.
Yeah, I think RTS had a magnesium housing, G-force top shifted dog box, like assembled, ready to go for $5,600 to your door.
Yeah, and I got my first dog box for $2,000.
NASCAR takeoffs and circle car takeouts, dude, if you're not on that game, circle car used parts are a great option for drift parts, especially dog boxes and driveline components.
Gotcha.
And that's still grassroots, that because in other forms of motorsports, this stuff that we're talking about right now is grassroots to them. This is the standard stuff that a normal guy would have in his garage are these transmissions, and now we're just repurposing them into a drift car. I'm not telling you to go out and get a Samsung 6-speed sequential or a Hollinger or anything like that. These are just $3,000 transmission setups that work for what we're doing. So
Yeah, they're not the top of the line, The transmission in this car brand new costs $17,000.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that you need that. That doesn't mean all dog boxes have to be like that. A dog box has been around for so long that it's like a dog box has been around longer than a T56 has. So
You can pick up a broken Jericho for $1,000 sometimes.
yeah,
And if you're one of those guys that like we talked about ways to make it cheap and looking for used parts, if you're gonna do that, you better have some skills and teach yourself some stuff. But these boxes are super simple to rebuild, and you've got Google, you've got YouTube. If you can't figure that out, I don't know how you're building a drift car. So you can pick up a broken dog box and rebuild it for under $1,500 if you take some time to learn what you're doing. And you want to talk about, can you do a LS swap for $5,000? Yeah, if you know what you're looking for parts and you're buying the right parts cheap, used. Because if you're buying the wrong cheap parts, then that's going to cost you more. But if you're willing to learn and willing to put in time.
So we'll get more into what are the other aspects that you did for your Pro-Am build. Anything other crazy than that was?
Or the motor specs.
motor specs.
You told us it was a plow motor. Any cams, any fast intake manifolds, direct port nitrous.
LQ4, which is the iron block 6-liter, has 9.5 to 1 compression, 243 heads, which you can get on eBay for $250 for a set. Valve springs, cam, lifters, basic stuff, stock head bolts. No need to do like head studs or anything fancy like that. Stock head gasket, all parts store, Rock Auto stuff. What else? Ls6 intake manifold that I've had for years that you can buy. Dorman well, Dorman actually upped their price because they realized they were sitting on a gold mine, but just a reman Ls6 intake, which you can find on the forums for maybe $300, $350. Yeah, that was really it. It was basic. You could reproduce that motor all day long for under $2,000, you know, and
Even less if you,
even less if you get deals or, you know, find used parts on forums. You know, there's no reason why you can't go buy a used cam, used lifters.
And what were the numbers on that one?
Like 400,
So,
pretty basic.
420 dyno jet, so like just under 400 on the dyno dynamics.
And what'd you have in the rear of the car?
Rear of the car was it was kind of an interesting setup. It was a Q45 like housing with a welded S chassis like differential, but it had the Q45 ring and pinion in there.
And that's when that's the one you gotta re-drill the where the ring gear mounts. I think you gotta re-drill that to make the Q45 ring and pinion bolt to the S chassis center section.
Yeah, all you had to do was just drill out the ring gear because the diameter.
The bolts
go through the ring gear into the diff, and the bolts were just a little bit wider, larger diameter. And then it was just running the Villains 350Z stubs and then 350Z axles.
Okay.
So that was the bane of the car's existence. We broke axles and stubs
Just
all year
a
long.
note on that, when you're looking at parts store axles, just make sure you know what you're getting. Once we went to OEM axles, it was mostly all right. We did break other stuff, but not axles. So
For all cars, BMWs, Nissans, whatever it may be, run OEM axles. Do not run part store axles. They are not the same.
Yeah, they'll try to lure you in with the lifetime warranty because you're like, oh, sweet, I can just get infinite axles. But the problem is when you're breaking them all the time, you're not going to be driving. You can buy one set of, you know, OEM axles that'll last you for the life of the car.
It may cost you twice as much, but you'll get 3 to 4 times more seat
And
time.
sometimes that doesn't even cost you twice as much. Hit up your local import salvage yards, normal salvage yards, things like that. I know I'm looking to go hunt down a set of 2 E46 M3 axles, and all 4 of those axles, $400, so $100 an axle. M3, can't go wrong.
Yeah,
So-
that was a stock diff. We broke all kinds of axles and stubs on it, not plated. It was just welded to the side. The gears were welded together. You don't need to overdo this stuff. We've had some conversation about that. There's nothing wrong with plating it, but you know, don't freak out if it's not plated and it's doing well. That diff, I think, went through with 3 years, something like that. No problem.
That was in my car since Brandon Denton
yeah.
had it from Florida.
Yeah, and so this is the car that won Pro-Am, one of the most winningest cars. You know, like I said, we were competitors. I was a crew chief, and Garrett Denton was the driver. And you know, it came down to you and Garrett a lot of the season. Shane unfortunately had car troubles early on, and he was in a borrowed car that he wasn't at home with. Otherwise, he would have been a big factor. But it came down to you guys, and we took ourselves out a lot of the time. You know, I always look forward to seeing you guys battle, even in Pro 2. But we took ourselves out a lot of the time because we were just overpowering the chassis and the components we had. You know, Garrett could drive a brick to a podium. Like, the kid's an amazing driver. But if the car lets you down, the car lets you down, you know. And then as a crew chief, you know, I'm like, man, we brought this rocket launcher to a fight, and now we're staying inside of a closed space. So we let it off. It's taking both of us out. You know, you're like, crap. So we overbuilt the car.
Yeah.
So
we probably would have had a more effective season.
So there's 2 ways to
Assemble
overbuild
a car.
the car. You can overbuild the power for the car,
Yeah.
and you can overbuild what you need. And it's if you overbuild the strength, like I will say that Pro-Am car,
Yep.
there were some things that were overbuilt on that. But you know, we spent the money once, and a lot of the stuff carried over.
Well, the crazy thing is, when I say we overbuilt the car, I thought we had the components we needed to harness the power that we had. But, you know, you read one thing on the forums, you see one thing on Facebook, and then you put it to the test yourself. You find that may not be the case. We had the 350Z adapters, too. They work great. But you dropped a hammer with 660 foot-pounds of torque in second gear at a low speed, digging out of a corner, snap both of those things in one go. Inside of a cos diff, killed the cos diff, killed the diff stubs, killed everything. You know, and you're like, oh, okay, we need to go to the 350Z diff. Meh, same stuff kept happening. They'll tell you, oh, the CDO9 can hold this much power. The clutch was actually the problem, not the transmission. We started killing the clutch and had to switch to the twin disc. And then, you know, we get to the twin disc, now we're back to hurting the trans. So, and you just start moving the weak point around, and it really just came back down to, did you need 660 foot-pounds of torque in Pro-Am?
A system thing again. You can keep chasing this weak point, but if your system's not one cohesive thing designed to work together, all you're going to do is chase that weak point.
Yep. And now, to give you an example, that same motor and that same setup is what carried us in the Pro 2. We didn't change anything. That car got tuned before it went to Pro-Am, and it was in Pro 2 on the same tune, still running pump gas, ethanol, exact same way it was in the Pro-Am car. So pretty much we were trying to run Pro-Am with a Pro 2 driveline, and it just was not there. So just keep that stuff in mind when you're specking out these 2JZs. It's really easy to make a 2JZ climb up in power and torque, and you end up with something that you can't maintain. Mm-hmm. So the LSs, man, I was envious of it. It's a really simple, clean setup. And if you're not a purist in a sense of, I grew up in an era of drifting where I love me some SR noises, I love me some KAT noises, some JZ noises. If you're not from that and you're really just trying to get into drifting and you don't have per se a flavor of choice, it's a very good option. The engines are everywhere. You don't have to import anything. You don't have to deal with any of that stuff. You can go that route, and you can still build a hot car around the LS. So this car actually didn't look bad. This was actually one of my favorite cars, aesthetically wise too. The color was really nice. It showed up in photos very well. I mean, you had XXR wheels on it that looked cool. I didn't even know they were XXRs, and they discontinued them. It's probably the best looking wheel XXR ever made. I was like, yo, what are these wheels? These WEDs? It's like, nah, man, these XXRs. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go kill myself now. Crap.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think that to your point, where a lot of people get caught up on the internet stuff, like, oh well, JZ versus RB versus LS versus SR, and I was lucky enough to never really get caught up in that stuff. I've never really been, I've never chosen a faction, like, I think JZs are sick. I think RBs are sick. I think every motor is cool in its own way. But all I look for when I'm making decisions about driving is what is going to get me the most seat time and what is going to do that, cheaply. And that those were the decisions that drove me from my first season all the way up until, moving into Pro 2. Once you get into Pro 2, those priorities need to change a little bit. But, for the first 5 years that I've ever driven, it's just every year I never thought I need to make this much power this year. I never thought about making power. I never thought about being cool or having the coolest car. All I was thinking about was, how can this help me drive more? How can this help me drive cheaper? How can this help me, basically just drive as much as possible? Because seat time is literally the only thing that matters. Like people were saying, I know Neville was talking about it. Mm-hmm. I would rather run a car with no body panels, fake wheels, with, the cheapest tires you can get, as long as I'm driving. Mm-hmm. My first season, I went to the junkyard or whatever and ran on used tires, stock angle, stock seat, stock steering wheel, stock seat belts. Like, I didn't care what people thought of me. I didn't feel like I needed a certain, criteria. I didn't need a body kit. I didn't need wheels. I was running on stock 350Z wheels in the front and stock S chassis wheels in the back. Like, it looks so dumb.
For the record, I need a body kit and wheels.
But
there's nothing wrong with wanting that to have a cool looking car, but if you want to last it and you want to get better as a driver, and this isn't just drifting, this is any motorsport, think about what lets you do that, and that other stuff can come later.
Well, I think it brings
you gotta have it right now.
It brings an interesting dynamic of priorities.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's got to be a balance, at least a little bit in between these two things, because some people don't care as much, but they want to drive, like Jeff, and then you get like people like Jelani who just.
Well, no, you gotta handle you gotta handle necessities first. You get your subframe bushings, and you get a D-Max spoiler. Then you get your inner tie rods, and then you get an origin kit, and then so on and so forth. Yes, you gotta balance it. It's a balancing it. I'm kidding, but yeah,
it is. It is
a balancing act. It goes back to what we said on the first video. You can come out And you can put some effort and some elbow grease into making your car presentable. Presentable means that it doesn't look like a complete hodgepodge. It's not an eyesore, but you didn't go out and spend $2,000 on a body kit first thing. So you can do both. Keep your car presentable, but you don't need to be the animal style hot boy your first year in the game. Like, grow into that. Balance yourself. Get your seat time. And it all comes. Julian Jacobs' car also used to be primer gray on 17s, NAKA with no bumpers on it, but he was a savage behind the wheel. And now he's still a savage behind the wheel, and the car is amazing looking. It's probably arguably one of the best looking cars in the U.S. So it all comes in time. You don't have to have it all right away. You don't get into skateboarding sponsored with Nike SBs and a freaking camera rig chasing you around the streets of San Francisco. You start out on a gravelly ass parking lot with a busted board and stuff like that, and some Air Force Ones with some Chuck Taylors. Like,
yeah, and that's why I think a lot of people are misguided. I mean, they think that what's going to gain them notoriety or what's going to make them, quote unquote, cool in the drift scene is what their car looks like, or whatever. If they have a high horsepower car with a nice body kit or something. But I mean, if you're not driving, I don't care. You could have the sickest car, ever, but if you don't know how to drive it, you're not a drifter, in my opinion. Like, that's the thing. You need to, obviously, I want cars to look good, and cars need to look good. I want drifting to be a presentable sport. I don't like when people joke, but don't joke about, oh, it's just a drift car. Who cares? I spend a huge amount of time making stuff on my car perfect, even if nobody's ever going to see it. Yep. Because there's a big difference between, taking pride in your stuff and, making it nice for no reason.
What was your story about him the other day with a toothbrush cleaning this thing?
Oh, yeah, man. We had a little bit of an oil leak at Grid Life one year, and not bad, but definitely got oil everywhere. And Jeff sends me a message, hey, we're just cleaning this up, got the engine out if you want to come over and help. And I walk in, and he's in the middle of the chassis, no engine, safety glasses on, a roll of shop rags, and a toothbrush with Simple Green, literally scrubbing the creases of the frame rail with a toothbrush. So
that's the thing. Like, you can have a car that costs $2,000.
Yeah,
you don't need a $50, $70, $80, $90,000 drift car. You could have a car that costs you $2,000, and it can still be really nice because it doesn't need to be expensive for you to take your time.
Your first car was an SR car, and it didn't look like this. And I mean, the story behind this color is he rattle canned the SR car with a Rust-Oleum color that we matched for this car to match his first drift car. And yeah, maybe you get up on it and it's not this pristine $120,000 car, because it wasn't. But it was a $200,000 or $2,500 car. So when we talked about that was a cheap car. That's what got you your seat time. Yep. And it looked presentable because you rattle canned it and you took your time to put in the elbow grease and make it look presentable. That takes time. It takes some effort. There's ways to do it without spending a bunch of money. So care about your car, but don't care to the level where it takes you out of the game.
Yep.
And so, again, thanks guys for watching. Jeff, you have any last final words on, where can people find you at? What's a little bit about your...
Yeah, you can probably find my social media links somewhere in the video. I'm sure it'll put them in, but I'm also streaming on Twitch lately. I know it's not really drifting related or motorsports related, but I play a lot of Fortnite competitively, so I've been streaming that, so follow me there. And I'll be out at grassroots stuff this summer, and maybe not driving a bunch, but trying to get on maybe the other side of the fence with some organizational stuff and just helping out, maybe coaching a little bit. So
that'd be cool.
Yeah, just trying to give back.
Cool. Anything about the program you want to plug?
Man, we got a good program behind us, a lot of good partners, but should be a fun year. Just gonna try to get back to the basics, make the car easy to drive, make it fun, and just go burn some tires.
Do you think that was something last year that you struggled with, was making the car fun to drive?
Yeah, the car was really tough to drive last year because we had we came into the series thinking, oh my goodness, we're gonna need to have so much grip to keep up with these cars, and then we oh wow, we put way too much grip into this car, so that made it a lot harder for me to do my job. Not that I wasn't a problem, for the first time in the history of me drifting, I got into my own head a lot of times, which I've never done before. So I think that already this year, the mindset's way better. I'm not taking it as seriously, you know. Just, I mean, I'm taking it seriously, but you're not overthinking. You're not like
You're having fun.
getting yourself worked up for no reason. Yeah. So
Which is what you talked about earlier. Is in order to do Pro 2, you have to have a certain, I guess you'd say, mentality, or you have to enjoy this. You have to enjoy cleaning your engine bay with a toothbrush. You have to enjoy the driving. You have to enjoy not only driving but keeping this car like this.
yeah, you're spending way too much money if you only enjoy the 30 seconds you're out on the track. You know, you got to have fun doing the whole thing if it's worth it. And you know, that's what we've always said. The minute that I'm not having fun doing this, done. Like, Pro 2 is not something that I'm going to be doing if I'm not absolutely loving every second of it. So we're going to try to keep that up.
Awesome. And again, Brian, thanks for all the insight. And again, thanks for watching the podcast, guys. And if you feel like subscribing, that would be awesome. I'd love to get to 1,000. That would actually be kind of cool to get some, 1,000 subscribers. But again, follow us on social media at Daily Driver Media Network on Facebook, on YouTube, Instagram. I'll be following this guy and a whole bunch of other Pro 2 drivers this year in FD, and just, I mean, there's going to be a ton of cool content coming from us and these guys, Jelani. I mean, we got a lot that we're bringing out. So hopefully you guys stay tuned for more, and again, thanks for watching.